Lose somebody again? Why is that happening?
I don't know.
Where did Keith go?
Okay, well, let's just get started.
So looking to see what if we're streaming.
Yeah, Facebook is up.
Facebook is up. Okay, we're streaming on Facebook. Hopefully we're streaming on
X.
Twitter.
What about Threads?
I can't even put video on Threads.
With Keith, it's back.
Keith is back.
Uh-huh.
I don't see him.
Well, I just admitted him, so
You're live.
Yeah,
on-
I think
yeah,
I
I
accidentally
admit.
closed the app.
We admit you, Dennis.
All
Okay, let's go. Give us the mute.
right, mute is off. Let me get you set up here.
I know we're recording everywhere, locally and remotely, given the issue last
Is it on
time.
LinkedIn before we start?
Yeah, LinkedIn's up.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Quiet, please.
We're gonna go in 3.
No, start with,
Mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang. Welcome to the people that we see displayed before us in this incredible Zoom interface. Starting with Keith Tier in Palo Alto. Maybe not.
Oh wow, I'm never first. That totally shocked me. I was just waiting to be last.
Okay, and
Anyway,
so the
great to be here at
content.
9 a.m.
Okay, and that's what you get for your lower third, correct?
Correct.
Okay, fine. In London, England is Frank Radis. Welcome, Frank.
Hello, Steve, Tina. Hello, gangsters, and welcome to Zoomland.
Ooh.
That means we're all Zoomlanders.
Oh,
In the Duchy of Massachusetts is Dennis Pombriant. Welcome, Dennis.
Greetings, everyone. I am speaking to you from dry land, which may not be true 24 hours from now, as
Okay.
we're anticipating a tropical storm hitting us.
And how's the bandwidth holding up?
So far, so good.
All right. Well, good luck with Lee.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Sad time of year.
The person who just delivered the good luck is Tina Chase Gillmor. Welcome.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't ready for that.
That's the idea.
well, you handled it better than Keith did, so yeah.
Wasn't ready for that. So let's say hello to me. Okay, fine.
My handling capabilities are widely known to be terrible.
Tina Chase Gillmor, and I'm happy to be here. All right.
And we're happy you're here.
Happy.
The guy who just said that is Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
See, I did that because I knew he would segue to me if I said something.
Yes, you did.
I didn't want to be caught off guard like Keith was, so I forced the matter. And by the way, Keith, your bokeh is really nice. The image quality, the blurry background, very nice.
A Samsung autofocus cinema lens on a Sony FX3.
Nice.
Nice combo.
And what is the value proposition of the blurry background?
It prevents you from seeing my Trotskyist works.
But is that blurry background just because of depth of field, or is that some
It's
tech?
depth of field, yeah.
Yeah,
Nice shallow depth of field.
yeah.
So Keith and Brent, you really are competing with each other with these lenses, aren't you? And these cameras. I mean, you're doing it all the time, sort of measuring it up.
I'm just admiring. He's got a good setup there. It looks nice. See,
And-
It's coming out of an Atmos
Ninja.
Ninja, the 7-inch one,
Mhm.
Shogun, going into via a USB into my Mac.
Oh, USB.
From the Seattle, Washington area is Michael Markman.
How do you do? I'm here in the Seattle, Washington area, as advertised.
And
And
that's
you
all.
have a blurry background too.
Yes, but mine is faked.
Yeah, but it looks like a depth of, it actually looks like you have I know it's just the side of a wall, but it looks like a second shot stuck on the right side of your picture. It's weird looking.
I don't know. There's a
The frame.
well, there's a fireplace chimney, and there's a poster on the wall, and there's a bookshelf.
Yeah, never mind. It's too difficult to
And,
explain. You'll see it when you see it, because we
Okay.
see it when I look at it.
Okay, so with the hammering in the background,
We hope we don't-
we have a hard stop at 1 p.m. Eastern.
So let's get to it.
Do
So
it.
okay, what do you want to talk about?
Gun laws and how it affects Hunter Biden. That's an interesting story to me from here in the UK. It just seems that and the impeachment story, it all seems like something going on in a 9th grade playground. This whole revenge thing, it just looks so bad. The optics over here look so bad. And then the age thing with Biden, it all looks like it's just like these two guys are going head to head about everything that doesn't matter.
Mm.
And that's why you're talking about it, right?
Yeah, because look, well, I'll be honest with you, I spent 10 days not thinking about any of this stuff in France, and
Oh,
I come
lucky
back,
us, now that you're back.
and I come back, and this is what I'm inundated with on watching MSNBC all day, trying to
Okay.
catch up.
Okay, so that's one
Thing. Oh,
one thing.
Apple, new products. That's the other thing I wanted to talk
Really?
about. Well, yeah, because I'm trying to decide whether or not I'm going to actually go and spend the money to buy some of this stuff. And I don't know. I feel like to upgrade from a 14 to a 15 isn't going to help me that much. I don't know. What do you guys think?
How about an 11 to a 15? Will that do something?
We'll see, right?
Yeah, that's my strategy. The delta from one year to the next is okay, but if you wait a couple of years, 3 years, 4 or 5, you get a new product, and wow, look how much better it is.
And I always liked my 12. I thought my 12 Pro was a really good phone. France has just now decided that it will no longer sell the 12 items because of an abundance of radiation. They say. I
saw that note.
Yeah, is that happening in America, or is that just like French radiation? Well, I don't know.
I don't think well, the news reached America. The news from France reached America, but I don't think anyone has stopped.
I think the 12 seems to have been that was the turning point for Apple, the 12. And then from that point on, it was like, do I switch to a 14? I don't know. Then I did. And yeah, there was a difference. But I don't know about the 15. I don't know what to do.
Come on, titanium.
Well, Titanium, which is a really great song and a great metal, and a good name for a band. too.
Okay, anybody else have anything they want to talk about?
Keith, are you buying any of these new Apple products, and why or why not?
I ordered at 5 a.m. this morning. I got up, not because that was the Apple ordering time, but because I've got to work offsite later today. They hadn't finished the work for, and it luckily coincided with pressing buy on the Apple thing.
Yeah.
So what did you buy? What
Keep that up. You keep up the idea that you weren't up because Apple ordered you to be up at that time.
Exactly. So there's only one I could buy because I'm a camera guy, and the iPhone Pro Max is the only one that's got the 5x zoom.
Yeah.
So I had to buy it, and I actually prefer the smaller phone. The zoom and then turning it into landscape mode to get stereo cameras to produce 3D,
Mm.
which is so obvious when you think about it. So
Yeah,
those are the two things for me.
Okay, those are really good reasons to spend the money. I also really think I should buy an Apple Watch Ultra.
I'm not upgrading my watch this year. I always do, but I didn't see enough change, so I'm gonna keep my watch.
Well, that's why I was saying the Ultra, which isn't even an upgrade. It's just a whole different watch.
And there's nothing on the iPad yet. You know, it's obvious that they must be putting such a ton of engineering effort into the face mask that, you know, it's somewhat incremental apart from the hardware upgrade on the big iPhone.
I thought that there was some talk during the presentation about how the new iPhone was going to interface with all of the other AR and VR and the 3D and how it was all going to connect together, and that
Well,
there was
the stereo photography that Keith mentioned is a clear example, because you can't watch those 3D movies unless you buy the face mask. So you can start taking 3D movies as soon as you get your new iPhone 15 Pro Max, and then when the time comes, you can play them back.
I thought it was an interesting play, by the way, not to drift too far from Apple, but the VMAs had a thing where you would watch in an AR using the Snap glasses to vote for something on the VMAs. It was weird. I don't know. Did anybody hear about that?
I don't even know what the VMAs are.
Well, that's the MTV Awards.
I do know.
Wait, they play video on MTV again? It's been so long.
Hey, they were touting this huge rating of 985,000.
Whoa.
I mean, I used to be able to reach that many people by screaming out the window of my office.
Right.
I mean, aren't we getting that now?
There is no window today.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I actually had a
What
window
else?
I could
What
anyway.
else? This is too Frank heavy at the moment.
Yeah, come on. Unfrank it.
Okay, Brent.
Yeah.
What do you-
How about those Eagles?
Rams won last week. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Good for another week. You know?
Put that in the bank.
How about those Eagles?
Yeah, how about them?
Okay, so anything that interests you?
Well, I mean, I did just get back from Dreamforce, which was I don't know, how much you'd like to go into that, but it was pretty interesting. It was actually really good.
So tell us more.
I've never
What are
been.
the
Brent,
headlines?
so
What are the headlines?
Give
for
us a
Dreamforce?
flavor of it. Is it strategy setting for Salesforce, or is it mainly a marketplace for everyone to come and meet and get business done?
Yes.
And then some.
Right. I mean, it's really all of the above, but last year they did have a physical Dreamforce, but this year really felt like it was kind of back. And I'll say I was pleasantly surprised at the state of the city, because when I was thinking about going to San Francisco, I was not really looking forward to it based on the last time I was there, and all that I had heard since then didn't really feel good. Like I thought I was going to be, having to step over vagrants and.
No, that's LA.
Well, it was kind of Dreamforce last year, and it was kind of it didn't look as clean as it did last year, but this year, I'm telling you, it was. I don't know what happened, and it seems like something must have happened in the last couple of weeks, and I think I know what that was. That made it's definitely cleaner, and it was less visible signs of vagrancy, and it felt like the old Dreamforce. So that in itself was kind of a pleasant surprise, because I was really expecting, not that.
There's a huge buried debate triggered by Gary Tan, who's now CEO of Y Combinator, who is become a spokesperson for Asian Americans in San Francisco. And there's a recent history of the Asian American families in a school district winning elections, and they were characterized as conservative because they wanted traditional education values, but I think they were just parents wanting good things for their kids. And Gary Tanner's kind of become the cheerleader of that, and the whole city authorities are putting posters around the city depicting him in a fairly racist way as an Asian kind of rebel rouser. The pictures are very, caricatures of how an Asian American might look. I'm sure they don't mean to be racist, but they are actually totally racist. And so there's this interesting thing in San Francisco where the Democrats have become the bad guys, not standing for normal people. And the normal people have become depicted as conservatives for wanting clean streets, math to be including algebra and stuff. It's kind of weird to me it's definitely not susceptible to a left-right discussion. It's kind of what kind of a life do you want discussion?
Oh.
What do you mean? They don't want math anymore in school? What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, it
Apparently
sounds
the
like
San
Florida.
Francisco school district is removing the requirement for certain levels of math.
So it'd be math AF, in other words.
Man, it sounds like Florida.
Boy, is that a dumb idea. I mean, come on. How can you not learn math in these times? That's ridiculous.
Well, in the attempt to be equal, which I assume is what drives it, because I think there's good intent behind it, they are lowering standards.
That's
I don't know if it's, I don't know much about this. I don't know if it's lowering standards per se, but there's been a fair amount of discussion about what math we're teaching. Does everybody need to learn calculus? Because if we don't all need to
Hope
learn
not.
calculus, we don't need to learn algebra so much. And maybe we should spend some more time on trigonometry and geometry.
What
And-
happens if I didn't do that either?
And even business math. Business math is going to be a lot more valuable to
What is business math?
well, accounting,
Tax,
ledgers,
probably
Tax,
statistics.
Like
Stats.
you're talking about practical math, things that you actually use in your life, which, it makes a lot of sense, right?
Well, I mean, there's certain things that you need in life, regardless of what you do, like taxes, for instance. But there's a whole lot of math that just falls away depending on what you wind up doing.
Yeah, but the idea that learning math also teaches you sort of a discipline and a way to think, as opposed to, oh, this is math and I'm never going to use it. That you find out later in life. Look, I know I'm just talking here into the sky, but it seems to me like I don't believe that I mean, I know I said, what am I ever going to use this calculus for? What the heck is this algebra going to mean to me? And I found myself over the years, somewhere in the last 70, saying, oh, that's how I thought. And I learned to think that way because I studied those things, even if I didn't do well, which I didn't.
But if you think about things like, we studied this stupid math and all we got was the Golden Gate Bridge. Math actually leads to engineering, which leads to architecture, so
Coding.
At a young age, you can't know who's going to turn into what. So if you remove essential ingredients of higher level human capability early, that's going to penalize everyone in a way.
And
Well,
I think
I
that's
don't think
what's
so.
going on in Florida. I actually believe that the problem, and the biggest problem, is a place like Florida, which is just eliminating so much stuff.
So
Well,
Dennis, you say you don't think so?
I don't think so. I think what Frank's talking about, and maybe a little bit Keith, is about quantitative thinking.
Mm.
And there are lots of ways to get to that point. I can tell you, I have two sons that went to music school. They did not learn anything beyond algebra, and they're doing just fine. But more importantly, how do you solve the problems of writing a song or creating a play?
Absolutely.
Those are disciplines too, and we don't do a very good job of teaching those, primarily because it's a lot harder to attach money to them, but they're still real. I can tell you that I learned how to solve problems in physics, in mathematics, in chemistry, and probably somewhere else. And they're all different disciplines, and I don't use most of them at all anymore.
Except you solve problems.
I solve problems, and Frank, you're absolutely right. It did give me a sort of a framework.
And music
here in
is
Massachusetts.
Music
for
is
problem solving.
exactly the same thing. I agree with you and your kids 100%. Music is exactly the same thing. It helps you solve problems. It gets you from point A to point B. It allows you to think differently.
Exactly. And on the flip side, there was an article in the Atlantic not too long ago by Temple Grandin, who is a large animal veterinarian, I believe, who is autistic. There was a movie about her life. She was played by Claire Danes in the movie. I think it won an Oscar. And she said, I didn't do well in algebra, and it kept me from getting into veterinarian school. I had to try 2 or 3 times. And because I didn't do calculus afterwards either. And there's something wrong with that, because what we think of as STEM subjects may be simply something we inherited from the 20th century, and we have to ask ourselves if those inheritances are still valid in the 21st.
But you're talking about abstract thinking leading to practical outcomes where the brain can conceptualize and then execute, which is a rare combination. You don't often meet people who are really good at both of those. Often there's good people that can abstract and create at a high level of abstraction, and then other people who take the thoughts and can execute them. And I do agree with you, Dennis, that in all fields, really, that ability to abstract, like when in school you read 1984, no one asks you what was the government guy wearing. They ask you, what does it mean? So they're trying to get you to think abstractly about issues and critical thinking, and I think that's different from applied math, where like if you ask me what is a prime number, I can't get beyond the first few, because it's just not how my brain works, and I can't do pi related calculations in my head. That's not how my brain works, but I'm really good at thinking about abstract patterns in history and applying them to what I think about today. And so everyone's different. And in education, you're really giving them a bowl of soup with all kinds of ingredients to figure out who they are. That should be the goal.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd also say that should be injected into this conversation is that different parts of the brain mature at different rates. And some of the higher math that we're talking about gets done in the prefrontal cortex, which doesn't mature until the mid-20s. So to a degree, if we're trying to teach kids in high school things that their brains just aren't really developed for yet, then all we really are doing is selecting for the kids with sort of premature maturation of the prefrontal cortex, not necessarily math ability.
Yeah.
So the
that's
smart kids get pointed at and say, you're the smart one.
And that's a different framing. The Gary Tan framing is all about quality, being let go. And he thinks it's driven by diversity thinking. So obviously that's very controversial. And everyone skirts around the edge of it because it's a dangerous topic. I think what you're saying is something different, which is more interesting as well, which is education is not tuned to human beings as they actually are. It's almost like cookie cutter education. that doesn't take into account individuals very much at all. And maybe that's okay because they're too young and their brains aren't developed, that they just need the groundings. But then they get scored and their whole life gets determined by how they do on a GPA against those things that may or may not be relevant to them in the future. So there is a broader topic about what is a personalized education look like.
Well, doesn't that point a finger at sort of the inherent unfairness of those standardized tests? I mean, you go in and you don't really do very well on your SAT, and you don't get into the college that you want to get into. Could like put up a wall in front of you for the rest of your life.
Yep.
Doesn't know or can't tell whether you might have gone away and become a great musician or a terrific artist or something else.
Well, this is a great segue back to Salesforce and Dreamforce, believe it or not, because one of the things that came away from it with is that the STEM education that I might have gotten, and I've never written a line of code in my life, but it might have given me the ability to write something in, say, C++ or Java or whatever. That's not necessary anymore. We have machines for that. The job of the techie, I think later on in the century, starting today, is going to be about how you deal with the generative AI system to make something that's appealing and draws the user in and gives the user the satisfaction of getting their issues taken care of. Those are different skill sets than pure algebra.
But this is kind of an extrapolation of something that started when handheld calculators first started appearing, and you had to question whether you needed to know arithmetic skills because you could punch a few buttons and get the answer. And as our silicon brains get more capable, our meat brains have different tasks to perform. So much of coding now can be done outside of line by line coding, can be done by generative AI. So one of the issues, talking about not just how individuals develop at different rates and have different talents, the whole context in which they're going to mature is also changing. So when people used to talk about computer literacy back in the 70s and early 80s, you have to teach people how to use computers. By the time those people get through school, computers have changed so completely that anything they might have learned, what was called computer literacy back in the early 80s, is irrelevant to how you interface with computers today. In fact, we don't even call computers today. We call them tablets. We call them phones. We call them watches. It's a really hard problem to solve because you're not only dealing with individual maturation, you're dealing with societal and contextual maturation.
Just a minute, my acoustic coupler is not working very well.
I don't care what you say. I'm very grateful for whatever courses I took that told me where the any key was.
Where is the any key?
Press any key. All right, which one is it?
I just read an interesting story by a friend of mine named Joanna Popper, who used to I think she was at Honeywell for a while, and she's now an agent in Hollywood. And her expertise was in immersive media, and is now sort of moved over from immersive media to generative AI. And she's working with a whole bunch of Hollywood stars who have allowed themselves to be to work with AI to create their own likeness and their movements and their sounds and all of that in generative AI, which then couples with immersive media, and in an effort to try and change what the future of content creation is. I'm not sure what I think of that, but I do in terms of whatever the end game is. But right now, I think it's interesting that they are actually voluntarily getting involved in doing that. So I see, obviously this gigantic shift in what and what the entertainment industry and content creators are doing with generative AI. And that, I think, is going to be something that is going to be a really big deal in whatever the end game is with the SAG-AFTRA Writers Guild strike.
So Frank, do you think that, like, if in the future we have what happened to Frank?
Frank is right there.
Oh, yes.
I'm here. It's Steve that's gone.
Okay.
Correct.
That's because Tina comes across as Steve on voice because she uses his microphone.
True.
Not
Why
true.
did Steve left because we started talking about generative AI? Is that
No,
No.
I'm horribly bored by generative.
the entire
So I
conversation?
turn my camera off. And there's-
Okay.
All right.
So-
Anyway.
Well, if he goes, I go.
Yeah.
No.
I'll go. Heck, I'll go too.
The
What the
quick
heck?
question is, if in the future, let's say these people or more actors have donated their style, performance, and their shape and their voice and all this, and a computer can then regenerate them, saying, doing whatever they can do. Will they get paid for that?
Well, that's
actually
that's actually part of why they're jumping in the bandwagon early, so that they can guarantee that they get paid for that. There's a company that's doing it called Metaphysic AI. And what they're, people like Tom Hanks and Octavia Spencer and Anne Hathaway have all jumped in to donate their AI likeness. But part of it is that they want to guarantee that they will be remunerated for it down the road.
It's not actually a donation. It's some kind of other transaction.
A license.
Well, it's a transaction. That's exactly right.
Ultimately, you can eternalize your fame if you're prepared to sign up for a digital twin, which is the language they use, of yourself. And like in the new what's that show where they go in to Egypt and find treasures, and there's like 5 of them, and a new one just came out where the rock rolls through the cave and nearly kills them in one of the early ones. You know the one.
What are you talking about? Indiana Jones?
Indiana Jones. So the latest Indiana Jones.
Terrific
there's a lot
movie,
of
by the way.
digital likeness. There's a digital twin in there, and so imagine that many years after his death, Charlie Chaplin could still appear in movies, and Charlie Chaplin's family trust could still get paid.
Why not?
So I think eternalizing the ability to be paid through your likeness is going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's another step in a direction that the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild are trying to keep ahead of.
In some extent, we already have that. The estates of Albert Einstein and Fred Astaire and Cary Grant are collecting royalties on use of their likenesses, even though they're not digital twins; they're analog twins. But if you want to put Einstein in anything, you have to pay for it.
So the character that played Einstein in the Oppenheimer movie, the Einstein family most likely got paid.
But I would say I would distinguish between that, Tina, and what you talked about, which is learning from or even mimicking things that you experience. It could be sounds, it could be images, anything really. To me, that is what human beings do anyway. I mean, if you were to say to me, where did that idea come from? There is an answer, but I don't know what it is. It came from everything I've experienced, and so building on top of experiences is not the same as stealing copyright, and AI will build on top of experiences without stealing copyright, I think.
But will it create personality?
Maybe. We don't know yet, but why wouldn't
we
it?
have a great way of
I don't know. I'm just
personality already.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's called the next generation. I mean, can you imagine 50 years from now, if the only stars in Hollywood are digital, who's going to give a damn? I mean, so much of a star's mystique and worth is tied up in who they're sleeping with.
Well,
Yeah,
that
but you could
I would
you could
disagree.
fake
I
that.
would disagree. If you
Well,
look at Pixar and the storytelling capability, and everything's digital, and no one cares because they know it's digital and they still love it. Why? Because of the storytelling.
Yeah, but don't they more or less make up completely new characters for each film?
Well, unless you're like one of the Cars in the Cars series.
Yeah, maybe you're Shrek, but by and large, I mean, I haven't seen any of the characters from Beauty and the Beast do anything other than Macy's Parade.
well,
Oh,
that's
well,
that's
they
not
actually
exactly
go to
it's
the
not exactly
super.
so. Toy Story has had how many? 5 sequels with
Yeah.
the same characters. Um,
Beauty and the Beast was
many
on
of the
Broadway.
Disney animations had low rent direct to video versions so they could use the existing characters and collect a little bit more money by doing a low rent animation version and selling it on VHS and then later DVD.
Mickey Mouse is
Direct
still
to
around.
infinity
So I
and
mean,
beyond.
once a character exists, it's part of the
But-
IP. That IP can be reused, and it is.
I think, Dennis, you're right to call me out on that. The cross fertilization between personas into other scenarios doesn't happen in animation. But as soon as we're okay with digital characters and storytelling, 10 years from now, why wouldn't a 30-year-old Tom Hanks appear in a movie and people just accept it as a 30-year-old Tom Hanks? I think they would, if it looked like Tom Hanks or felt like Tom Hanks.
There's something
what
about
happens to
something about
Juilliard?
celebrity. I think there's something about celebrity that has to do with generational attachment. So if you had, there are some celebrities who seem to transcend generations. You mentioned Chaplin,
The Beatles.
but even so, and the Beatles is another example. But that's very rare. For the most part, pop stars, movie stars, and TV stars are people that you attach to as you're growing up, and maybe you grow old with them. But eventually, a new generation comes along that really has very little connection to Gregory Peck or Cary Grant. And eventually they'll have very little attachment to Meryl Streep. You always have new people. Taylor Swift is someone who's created a new fan base based on people of a young age attaching to her in a very visceral and maybe sexual, maybe intellectual, maybe emotional way. So you're always going to have new celebrities coming along that people will attach to, and you can't. I think that the digital twins are going to be in competition with real people, and eventually we'll lose out to real people.
Okay, we got 15 minutes left. Anything else?
Well, I was fascinated by your Mika Sifri post yesterday, Steve, on Substack. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but I mean, two things occurred to me. Number one, it was on Substack, and Substack is turning into, it's evolving, let's put it that way, into a conversational thing with some substance, which is more than Threads for me as well. Substack is way more than Threads. But the fact that it was all about Twitter and whether to stay or go, or he seemed to not want to give up his persona on Twitter, but so he's a bit half-hearted about it. And I put the comment in that it feels as if the people who are leaving X are joining a desert island of de-controversialized, if you will. And there's nothing much positive about it other than they feel good about leaving Twitter. So I don't know if I care much about all this conversation, but it was definitely thoughtful what Mika Sifri said and well researched.
Well, the Sifri piece was good because of all the other people he brought in on it. He posted something and got a lot of comments, many of which he excerpted. So it was very conversational. But for me, the moment the owner of X decided to blame the Jews for losing his advertising, I just deactivated my account. I'm not going to support it. I'll give up my own followers. I'll give up all the people I follow. I will not support that man. in any way.
Well, Jonathan Greenberg is a friend of mine, Mike. I've known him for 30 years. He runs the ADL. And Shari Gersten, who worked for me, got him his job. So I'm very kind of deep on that. I don't think Musk blamed the Jews. I think he blamed the ADL. And the ADL, Jonathan has said quite openly, he's called for a pause on advertising on Twitter, which has yet to be unpaused. So,
but he
there is
also
some
said
substance to
that the ADL, with a bunch of other groups, called for it, and Musk only singled out the Jewish group.
Well,
the ADL was not the ADL was not the driver of the loss of advertising, but Musk decided that ADL is the one that he was going to blame. I'm sorry, count me out. I'm not playing.
Well, that's fine. I mean, that's more of a personal decision, but I'm more talking about the bigger picture discussion that's going on. I mean, I don't know why you would call for a ban on advertising on Twitter. It seems a bit petty.
That's the only thing that he can do that has any possibility of effectiveness. So I'm not sure I agree with you.
And is it the case that advertisers ran because the ADL said go? That's not the case. The case is that Twitter has become toxic. That's the case, and advertisers do not want to appear in a toxic environment.
Well, I think a blind horse would agree with that.
That's not the fault of the ADL. That's the fault of Mr. Musk.
Well, the opposite of toxic is antiseptic, and honestly, I'd rather be in a toxic environment than an antiseptic one.
No, it's not a binary. I'm sorry, it's not a binary, toxic or antiseptic.
Yeah,
it's a spectrum.
Michael, can you let other voices in a little bit more so I can hear them?
The pair that you're talking about, Keith, is septic versus antiseptic, and septic simply means the presence of a lot of bacteria. Not all bacteria are bad for you. Your colon is septic. But toxic is a completely different thing. I don't know what the opposite of toxic is, but I think when anything gets to a point of toxicity, I don't think there's a sliding scale. I think Michael's right. It's toxic, and I applaud Michael's approach.
I think the opposite of toxic is nurturing.
We always disagree about this. So it's probably not worth going through the circle, but I think toxic is used as a word. If you unpack toxic, there's a lot of stuff inside it. Offensive, sometimes racist, sometimes fascist, actually. Sometimes the left is seen as toxic by the middle right, and so on and so forth. Toxic in a way is to me, it's a word you use when you feel intolerant. You don't want to hear it. You're intolerant of it. And I'm not intolerant of even the most extreme views. I'm okay for them to be there.
It's not a question of the views. It's a question of swarming behavior. If you look at the McKay Coppins article, that's an excerpt from his biography of Mitt Romney, he talked about the fact that in the Senate, people were not voting. I used to think that Republicans voted the way they did because they feared primaries from the right. But what Mitt Romney revealed is that they actually fear attacks from the minions of Trump's base. The question of toxicity is not the expression of opinions, but the swarming and the attacks that flow. It's the way the crowds are orchestrated and the way behavior is orchestrated, such that it's no longer simply a discussion of points of view. It's a question of people swarming and attacking personally and viciously with physical threats, people that they disagree with.
But if you
talk about, let me say one more thing. Kara Swisher has said that since Trump, since Musk took over Twitter, she's had to turn off comments because of the kind of swarming that happens, the kinds of vicious attacks that she gets. That's what the toxicity is. It's not simply the opinions that are expressed.
I don't know if you're familiar, Dennis, I bet you are. There's this whole tradition in British history going back to the 16th century
Off with their heads.
Of the mob, this word, the mob, where the elite typically characterize the mob as scary. And it feels like we intellectuals, which I don't really associate myself with this thought, but fear of the mob is not a worthy feeling.
Yeah, but it exists.
You know what's happening, and I would say
that
I'm
in
looking at
Congress
you
on
guys.
January 6th.
Michael, I'm still talking. I look at you guys. I got Michael on my left. I got Keith on my right. What I'm seeing is a 21st century view and a 19th or 20th century view, for the simple reason that one view takes into account the amplification that comes with social media, one doesn't. And because of that, I think what Michael's saying is the playing field has changed. And while I might agree with you intellectually and philosophically, I think Michael's point about amplification causes us all to have to rethink.
Well, I think there is amplification, which is a function of technology more than Twitter. It happens in any collective environment, pretty much. So it does exist, and that means that voices can travel further and louder than they could on previous media. And the kind of the controlling the microphone that happened on CNN doesn't happen in social media. So movements become possible, in quotes, not real movements, but what you call swarms become possible. And that all of that's true. I'm not convinced. I mean, insofar as it's true, it feels to me as if Musk is trying to stop that by making everything possible, not just some things. And in other words, he's saying, look, social media is what it is. It's for everyone. Let's not try to police it or control it, because that's impossible. Let's just make it as open as we can. Now, obviously, he's a flawed personality, and quite often he crosses the line and becomes himself a censor of things he doesn't like. So he's volatile and he's inconsistent, and I agree with that. But I think when he's calm and he's speaking his thoughts, I kind of agree with him.
You know, I wrote an article this week about that topic and pointed out that for the first time we have the possibility of a kind of regulation of social media. It's in the form of AI. We never had that before. We can't root out hate speech from social media with human intervention, but we can with AI. So I think it's a moving target.
A story just broke right now, by the way, that Twitter turned over at least 32 direct messages from Trump's account to the special counsel. No details on what was in those messages, but if they were subpoenaed by the special counsel and given over by Twitter, they must contain something that doesn't look good for the former guy.
Okay, we've got 6 minutes. Use it wisely, please.
Do you care about the Google trial and the supposed attempt to split the search from the advertising business, which is now in trial? It's only in the second or third day, so not much has happened yet. But it's being depicted as a big deal, as in equal to the Microsoft stuff from the 90s.
Well, I'm a big fan of the judicial system, especially when the people I don't agree with win one. The reason I think that is because when Trump has a legal victory, it has two impacts. One is whatever the issue is, and the other is that he's buying into the primacy of the legal system. You can't have it both ways. If you get a good report from your teacher and you get a star on your head, that's kind of, you become, the teacher's pet.
I just realized I had my hands on my head. I took them off as soon as I noticed.
I think it's unfortunate timing ultimately, for the simple reason that we are in the middle of changing the definition and importance of data, and I fear that any ruling in the Google case is going to be attached to an older form of data that we're rapidly not going to care about anymore. And
But that was true with Bill Gates's comments about the DOJ and antitrust. He basically said, no, somebody's going to come along and they're going to do it well before the government has any say in it.
Yeah.
And that's true, and it's true now.
Right. It's another witch hunt.
Well, I mean, that's a kind of deplorable comment, which I personally recoil from.
Recoil from what?
Labeling things as, I mean, I know you were joking, so I'm not being pejorative about what you're saying, but witch hunt to me is like a trigger word. It's like not a safe word. It's the opposite of a safe word. And I tend to disregard it more and more.
I think that's healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lock him up.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
But Steve makes a very important structural point that having a judicial system that acts as the public's ability to determine guilt or otherwise, and going by the results of it, no matter whether you like them or not, is an essential part of a democracy. If you don't have that, you have executive diktat. So, or legislative, which is rare, but executive diktat is less rare. And the judiciary is one of the three balancing acts that you have in a democracy.
I think it's the only balancing act right now.
Yeah, but don't you think the former guy wants it both ways?
Yeah,
by the way, sorry, go ahead.
What do we care about what Donald Trump thinks about anything?
Well, I think he has a chance. The court gives him a chance of winning because he only has to get 1 out of 12 to refuse to say he's guilty, and I'd take those odds if I was him. I think I'd take those odds. I would do exactly.
Well, he
what
has no
doing.
choice. He's trying to stay out of jail. But
yeah,
so it's pretty obvious what he wants and what he's thinking about. But what do we do? What are we thinking about? What's on our agenda?
well, that goes back to
I don't care.
That goes back to the opening remarks at the start of the show about, I haven't got an opinion yet, but I'm starting to get nervous about this whole, my wife came home yesterday and said that Crooked Joe spoken by Trump is starting to sound true. And she said she always thought of Joe as the nice granddad, and now she's beginning to wonder. And so she didn't really mean it, and she's not going anywhere with it. But the very fact that it was even in her brain, that there was a substance to the accusation, is probably
that's the swarming meme again. I mean, the thing I wasn't in favor of. Before South Carolina, in whenever that last election was, I wasn't thinking that my guy was Joe. And he basically, along with Jim, what's that guy's name from South Carolina? The senator or what?
Clyburn?
Clyburn, correct. Jim Clyburn knew more about what's really going on than just about anybody. And he said, no, this is the guy. And, he's a centrist. And, I'm going to get in a little bit of trouble with the progressives by backing him, but we're going to win. And that's what happened. So right now, I think the next president is Joe Biden.
Well, that's what's his name? The San Francisco mayor who was married to Trump's niece or something.
And he's playing a very smart game.
Yeah.
Newsom.
Gavin Newsom. He said he said, "Look, let's stop talking about it. Biden's the candidate. End of story."
Right. And that's, both a political calculation and probably correct.
Yeah. Yeah, Newsom bothers me. I don't know what it is, but
Oh, he bothered me too, except that I was at some sort of event, Salesforce event, maybe, I'm not sure. And I found myself standing next to the guy and I knew nothing about him. But parenthetically, he was coming out publicly. He was the mayor of San Francisco, I think, at that point. He came out strongly and directly and was the first politician to actually make this happen, in favor of same-sex marriage. And this was, I looked at this guy and
It's a powerful moment.
it's just like, I don't get where you're coming from, but boy, are you doing something here.
Yeah, he does a few things like that make you like him, but there's still something uncomfortable.
I'm not sure about the political, I'm not sure about the personality aspects of it. I think he's an effective public servant.
Yeah.
And we have so few of them. I also think, and nobody here agrees with me, that Elon Musk is an effective public servant.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, but you agree with me for all the reasons that everybody else disagrees with you. I'm talking about, if you watched him on Capitol Hill yesterday and on David Faber's interview with him on CNBC a month or two ago, and just in general, when he is able to escape the bounds of journalism trying to make a living, the guy is, you can follow how intelligent he is. Stupid about some, sense of humor. I mean, God, if I was judged on that basis, I would be, I am today.
Look, I don't think the objection to Musk is his dad jokes.
No, I think the objection to Musk is that, he's, for whatever reasons, he's gotten to a point where his opinion is often can impact on reality. And that's hard to take.
He's the richest man in the world, for God's sake.
Well, maybe
whatever reason.
Maybe not. I think he's probably going to maintain that as a result of having bought Twitter.
Did you see the news this week about Dojo, the supercomputer that they built at Tesla? The stock went up 10% in one day when it came out. Morgan Stanley wrote about it.
And what does that mean?
Dojo is this is a good example of Musk doing what you just talked about, Gavin Newsom. And by the way, I realize he's the governor in California and not the mayor of San Francisco, isn't he?
He was earlier.
He was both.
Anyway, so what Musk did is he said to his machine learning team, we're going to stop using radar and LIDAR, and we're going to use computer vision, cameras only. And he's built this huge supercomputer that can ingest massive amounts of video from Teslas and basically learn without being trained from video about rules of the road and various things. And there's a massive divided opinion. One side says it's impossible. Computer vision can never produce that, including a lot of his own experts. And he's insistent, saying, absolutely, we're just going to use cameras. It's going to be trained. There's going to be a computer in the car.
What's it called?
Dojo.
So Dojo Plus would be with added hallucinations.
Exactly. You don't want your car to hallucinate. That would be bad.
Well, obviously, it's going to need to see
every time they get one of those humans in the car, look out.
Or how about the humans outside the car that the cameras are shooting?
Anyway, it's the biggest supercomputer the world's ever seen, and Tesla owns it.
Okay, once around the table, starting with Michael.
Just started reading Naomi Klein's book, Doppelganger, which is a fascinating perspective into the strange world that we live in. You may know that you may know Naomi Klein for her books No Logos and Disaster Capitalism, the shock doctrine. Um, there's another Naomi Wolf, who was originally confused with her. Naomi Wolf wrote things about beauty. They were both seen as kind of progressive, but Naomi Wolf has turned more and more into a conspiracy advocate and a frequent guest on Bannon's show. And what Naomi Klein is finding is that people confuse the two of them. And so she's taken Naomi Wolf as her doppelganger. And she uses this as an entry into looking at the world we have, where so many people are in different conceptual universes, apparently living on the same planet. So you have the whole world of conspiracy theorists, the whole world of where you have Trump's world that seems to be just in a different conceptual and perceptual space than the rest of us. And her book Doppelganger is about this, about how we have these virtual and psychic and perceptual twins living in the same universe.
So are you saying that she's saying that I may have a doppelganger living in the MAGA world?
No, and she's not talking about you may or may not. It's not a question of
not specific
doppelganger. She's using the concept of doppelganger to talk about the fact that we do have this sense of twins. The original sense of a doppelganger was probably someone dark or evil that was your twin. And what she's saying is that we have these not just twin individuals, but twin universes, twin countries that are living together. I can't get much further than that because I've just started the book, but I think I'm going to love it.
I think that I had both of them living inside of me. Who?
Your turn. Go ahead.
Oh, so I've been inundated with all these stories about this thing on Netflix called One Piece, which I had absolutely no interest in looking at because it's a live action remake of a Japanese anime, which I'm also not overly interested in. But tonight I decided, or this afternoon, I decided that I would turn it on and watch a little bit of it. And I just laughed at it at the beginning, and about an hour into it, I went, God, I've been watching this for an hour. It's not so bad. It's very interesting. I don't know if it's made for kids. I guess it is. It stars a kid, but it's interesting, very well done, fascinating remake of an anime. It's on Netflix. Maybe worth your while to
One
check
Piece
it out.
is the name? One Piece?
One Piece.
All right, Tina.
Yeah.
I told you 2 minutes ago, I said, be ready.
I know that. I know that. So I'd like to say Lashana Tova to all those who celebrate Shoshana starting, I think, this evening. And I'd like to say farewell to an old friend. His stage name, so a comedian, was Geechee Guy. And his real name is Mike Cathers. I met Geechee about probably about 35 years ago, and helped him get out of the Michigan comedy clubs and brought him to New York and let him sleep on my couch and introduce him to people. And we had sort of a short professional relationship, but we always kept in touch and followed each other. And I'm sad to say that he passed away this week unexpectedly at the very young age of 59. And it just really made me sad. I know that he had a lot of friends in the comedy world. He spent a lot of his professional life in Las Vegas. But I have some solace in the fact that I feel he really did what he always wanted to do in life, is make people laugh. And he was well liked. He was a really sweet guy, and I think a lot of people will miss him. And farewell, Geach.
Brent, I think had to go to another of his 1,000 shows that he does. And Keith's here. Keith. Okay.
I think the ARM IPO is kind of interesting. Firstly, it didn't crash. At least I haven't looked today, but as of yesterday, it hadn't crashed. SoftBank somewhat get bailed out by it. And interestingly enough, it happened in a week when Huawei produced a phone with a 7-nanometer CPU, 100% created and built in China, that is a system on a chip like Apple has. And so suddenly there's a non-ARM Chinese chip that can run a powerful smartphone. And so I think the ARM China future of technology conversation kind of gets more interesting. And the fact that Apple invested billions in ARM on a 40-year deal is a sign of the extent to which the whole industry is building itself on top of ARM. It's kind of amazing.
Did Dennis leave?
He
Yeah.
did.
He seems to be gone, yes.
And Stephen, what's your
No, I got nothing.
now come on. Last thoughts, Steve.
Hi, I'm Frank Radis. I got nothing.
Well, I never have nothing.
No, you never. This is your digital twin Frank.
Yeah.
Speaking.
Okay.
My digital twin is built into me.
By the way, I did want to acknowledge, Michael, you said something very nice about my newsletter on Facebook. Thank you.
Oh, it was a good well, they're usually good, but this one was
I experiment. It was an experiment. I spoke my editorial into a microphone. And OpenAI has this thing you can put on your Mac called Whisper that will do voice to text. And so I did that, and I took the text and I just did a light edit. And so it was really a spoken editorial, which I've never done before. I didn't do it this week because actually I find speaking coherently quickly is a lot harder than writing. Writing, you can pause and think. With speaking, it's just got to come out properly.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that because I like doing that, actually.
All right. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.